Today we are talking about the 5 best practices when you are writing your first draft. And this week is all about writing. So if you writing specifically like your first draft. So if you're into that, go ahead and hit the follow me button and you can catch all of this week's. Hey Megan, I was just on your scope. Nice. I loved your scope this morning. I'm excited for you and all the cool stuff you've been doing this fall. So welcome as you're joining. Pop in the chat, say hi, tell me where you're from. Tell me what you write. Do you write blogs or books or something in between? I feel like I really get to know you guys when you let me know what you write. And then I can tailor my scopes to you. And if you have questions, feel free to pop those questions in the chat. I will either get to them at the end or maybe I'll do a whole scope all about your questions. And as we're going through this stuff today, Ron just joined the room. Hey, Ron. You guys know I take notes for you. If you're like me, I scope when I'm making food or driving or something where I can't take notes. So if you want to catch notes and replays and transcripts, hey Ron, go to paperravenbooks.com/periscope. And I'm trying to get like a decent looking sign up. But for right now, let me just show you. Paper right up there. paperravenbooks.com/periscope. And Ron, let me know, was that the right direction? Last time I had it mirror image. Was that right? And you can catch all the notes and replays and transcripts. So, okay, good. Thanks. Alrighty, guys. So, 5 best practices when you're writing your first draft. So if you're with us yesterday, we talked about how to prepare for the first draft. So the planning stuff, how to free write to clarify about your topic, how to pick a topic, how to write a rough organization is what I call it. It's more like a linear, kind of a flexible list. It's not an outline, it's not a mind map. It's something that's a little more structured, but flexible enough that you can move things around in your book before you start writing. So catch that over at paperravenbooks.com/periscope, and that'll give you a really good review. So now we're starting from the assumption that you have some sort of plan, right? You have a rough organization, and it has like the chapter titles, and it has the little like just snippets, short sentences, fragments, phrases that just describe the points you want to make. So obviously this method works best for nonfiction writers. Oh, hold on, pause. You don't know who I am. I'm Morgan Gist McDonald. I'm a writing coach and editor and author, and I run my business out of paperravenbooks.com. That's also where I blog. So I help you write your book from vague idea to first draft to manuscript. And this week is all about the writing process. So we assume you have your rough organization like we talked about yesterday, and it kind of has a linear progression from like that covers all the different ideas you want to talk about. It's not all fleshed out yet, but you have at least the ideas kind of written out. Thanks, Ron. I appreciate you putting that link down there. And if you guys want to share, this is a good time to share. And if, as we're talking, there's something that you like or that you want to hear more of, heart it up. Thanks, guys. All right, thanks, Ron. All right. Best practice number 1. Write from beginning to end, but skip the introduction. So you're looking at your rough organization. It has all this stuff. Oh, thanks for the share, Ron. It has all the topics listed out. You're going to skip the introduction. Just start at chapter 1, because the introduction is going to introduce what the book's about. But if you haven't written the book, you don't exactly know what it's about yet. It will change, it will shift, it will take shape in ways that you can't really anticipate. And that's a great thing. That's the fun thing about writing, is it's very creative in process. But that means you might as well skip the intro because it's going to change. Start with chapter 1, and same with the prologue. Exactly, Ron, you got it. Yep. Totally agree. I don't write fiction, but I read a lot of fiction, obviously, and totally agree. There's sometimes where you can tell that the author, like the prologue, you're like, I don't think that you knew in the prologue that this character was going to do this other thing. So it's always funny when that happens. So don't do that. Write the intro last. And I recommend actually that you write from chapter 1 all the way through down to the end. I know a lot of people skip around and things like that, but I think when you write from beginning to end, the reader experiences the whole book as a more complete, coherent whole. So if you have to skip something, fine. It's not the end of the world. But go ahead and just try to write from beginning to end, because then everything will transition a little bit better, it'll flow a little bit more smoothly, and you won't have to do as much in the editing process. It just makes everything a bit easier. So that was number 1, write from beginning to end, but skip the intro. Number 2, don't edit as you write. If you're writing, only write. Don't go back and reread those sentences. Don't try to fix subject-verb agreement. Don't try to, make sure that you hit this other point. Just write and let it flow out. Yeah, exactly, Ron. Fast draft. I'm not saying to write necessarily as fast as you can, but push yourself to keep going. It's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to feel like you're leaving loose ends behind you, and that's totally okay. Like, that is how writing happens. It's sort of, you gotta keep going with the momentum. If you make the mistake that we all do at some point and you go back and edit, you're gonna get stuck in the mud. You're gonna start feeling like, oh, this isn't making sense. I'm terrible at grammar. I can't spell anything. It's gonna, Ron says, yep, it's gonna suck, and that's okay. You just have to not let yourself get bogged down in the imperfect draft, because that's what happens when you edit. You go back and you realize, oh my gosh, this is not perfect, and then you feel cruddy about the whole thing and you just want to quit. So don't even look back. Just keep, like, every day, just forward. Always got to go forward until you finish the first draft. Alrighty, so number 2 was don't edit as you write. Number 3, write expansively. Okay, so what do I mean by this? If you're trying to make a point or describe a concept or walk someone through a process, use as much detail as you possibly can the first time around. Like, even if you find yourself repeating yourself a little bit, write as much about it as you can. Write more than you need, because it is so much easier to cut later than to add later. You'll forget what it is you were trying to say, and you just won't remember the important little things. So, write too much, basically, is kind of the point of all this. If you have the choice between writing too much and just writing little bits, write too much, so that later you can come back and edit. Which sort of dovetails with number 4. This is one of the most common and debilitating mistakes I see writers make all the time. Don't use bullet points. Okay, now let me explain what I mean. A lot of times when people are writing their first draft, they'll get to a chapter that's really intimidating because it's big and it's messy, and they just really aren't sure exactly how they're going to talk about this big, messy concept. And so they'll start bullet pointing things, and they'll say, bullet point, I want to talk about this concept. Bullet point, I need to address these 3 issues. Bullet point, I should include some research on this. Bullet point, and so it just becomes like 5 to 10 bullet points. Hey, Miguel, welcome. 5 to 10 bullet points. And so in their mind, they're kind of checking off that chapter. They're like, yeah, I did enough. But guess what? In a month or in a week, you'll come back and you won't remember what it is you were trying to say in those bullet points. And then you've got this like half done, half thought out, half baked chapter. And it's really tough to go back in and try to remember what it is you were trying to say there. So I can't tell you. I mean, and this is like, I know it's so tempting, but writers send me like first drafts, and one of the chapters was really difficult for them, and so they just put bullet points, and they're like, well, I sort of explained in the bullet points, can you just fill it in for me? And I'm like, okay, but bullet points are not explanations. They just aren't. Like, I wish I could read your mind, and I wish I could fill it in for you, but bullet points are often used as a shortcut to avoid explaining things. So don't do that. If you find yourself wanting to just stick bullet points in with short phrases, that's fine for the rough organization, but that is not okay for a first draft, because you will so regret it later. Because when you come back to revise, think about it. Like, when you're revising and editing, you don't want to be creating a whole bunch of new content. You want to just be adjusting the flow and the style of the content. So all the fresh, creative stuff needs to happen in the first draft. Okay, quick recap for those of you who have been joining. 5 best practices for writing your first draft. Number 1, write from beginning to end, but skip the introduction. We'll talk more about the introduction tomorrow. Number 2, do not edit as you write. Resist. Number 3, write expansively. Like over-explain everything if you can. Keep explaining until you feel 100% like I have explained that concept to death. Because you can always go back and cut later. But it's really hard to add later. Number 4, don't use bullet points. And this kind of dovetails with number 3. But if you find yourself approaching a really hard chapter or concept and you're like, I'm just going to cheat and put some bullet points here, don't. You will so regret it. / your editor will so regret it later. Just go ahead and explain it as best you can. It won't be perfect. Just push yourself through it. Finish it off. Number 5, if you know you need to research something, put an asterisk and keep writing. Do not stop to Google. Google will be the death of your first draft. Should put that on Pinterest. But if you are writing and you're like, oh my gosh, I know there's this study that shows that 90% of students drop out at whatever. Note, don't torment your editor. Yes, thank you, Ron. And you know that this study is out there and you kind of remember even the name and who did the study, just don't pull up Google. Put an asterisk every time you feel like there's something that you still want to research. And then when you're done writing your first draft, just do a search, a global, Control F, Apple F, whatever, and look for those asterisks. And then you can fill in those later when you plug in some time for research later. Scrivener has a nice notepad. Ron, you know so much about Scrivener that I do not know. I am still learning. Miguel, oh, good to know. Google has slowed me down. Yes, I like to have writing days or writing weeks, really, and then a research week. So I'll write the first draft and then plan a week or 2 to go back and just do research. So find those asterisks and just go through them one by one and plug that research into what's already written. It's tough. I also work with some people who are really into heavily researched nonfiction, and that is hard. So for some people, depending on how heavy the research is, if it's very integral to the book, you'll need to just plug more time for research. So you'll want to still write a first draft that is as straight through as you can without stopping to research, but you might need to plug 2 or 3 weeks between a first draft and then a revised draft. Plug 2 or 3 weeks to go back and hit all those research points. But put bumpers on it. There's a start date for research and there's an end date for research, and then you got to get back into the draft. You can't just, if you try to go just back and forth multiple times a day, you're not going to make significant progress on either writing or research. So write in a chunk, take a break, research for a chunk, take a break. Write for a chunk, and then, even in fiction, Ron, you said you had done some historical fiction, and even fantasy, sci-fi, paranormal stuff. There's always stuff that you feel like you need to know more about so that you can make it flow better. But honestly, the main chunks of your writing, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, are determined by you, the author. In fiction, it's your characters and your plot that determine the flow of the manuscript. In nonfiction, it's your argument and what you want to say that determines the flow. Nerds will always find something wrong. That's so true. Oh, thanks. Oh, Texas. I always forget your name. I'm going to look at your profile. Texas Namaste Chick. What's your name? I've seen you in here a bunch. I'm sorry. You should put your name on your profile. Chandra. Thank you. Thank you, Chandra. Okay. So, yes, just remember that when you are the author, you're the one who's determining the flow of the manuscript, the flow of the book. It's your characters or your arguments or your method or your perspective that is driving the flow of the book, not the research. The research is supportive. The research is just, honestly, the research is to show that you're right. That's a terrible way to put it. But in a sense, you can always find research to support either side. And by the time you come to writing a book, you probably already have done a lot of the thinking through stuff and forming an opinion, and you've already done a lot of this deep cognitive brain dump stuff. And so now it's time to just write. Just put all that down on paper, write the first draft, and then you can go back and research. So that's it for today, guys. Quick recap. 5 best practices. Write from beginning to end, but skip the intro. Don't edit as you write. Your manuscript will die a slow, painful, grammatically correct death. Write expansively, over-explain. Don't use bullet points to shortcut. just go ahead and explain the dang concept. Oh, thanks, Ron. And 5, if you know you need to research something, put an asterisk and keep writing. So those are all at the paperravenbooks.com/periscope. Let me flip you around so you can see. paperravenbooks.com/periscope. Oh yes, if you like to talk about writing and you want to write a book, follow me. Follow Ron, especially if you're fiction. Ron, pop some emoticons back up in there. Ron Estrada. Thanks, Miguel. Put emoticons down there. Follow me. Follow Ron. We're going to have a party. This is an unending, constant Periscope writing party. And we're going to do some more tomorrow. There we go. What is that? A trolley? Ron does great fiction and young adult fiction and is very inspiring and motivating. So y'all follow him too. And there was something else I wanted to say. I don't remember. And there's Miguel. Miguel, you also write too. Miguel, what do you write? Let us know. What do you write? I've forgotten. Dude, are you scoping now, Miguel? Miguel writes fiction. Miguel, are you scoping? You should be scoping. And I'm also on Twitter, same handle, at MorganGMac. Okay, Miguel, good. I need to put you on the Twitter list. I'm trying to make a Twitter list of all of the Periscope writers, and we're using the hashtag Periscope Writers so that we can try to find each other because Periscope searchability is ridiculous. New York subway horror. Oh my gosh, Miguel. Talk to me. Can you put somewhere in your book, Miguel, an episode of a young mom pushing a stroller and the elevator door opens and there's a guy peeing in the corner, because that happened to me. You're welcome, you're welcome. It wasn't horrifying, but it was really gross. And so I'm there with my 1-year-old at the time pushing the stroller, hoping to avoid carrying my 1-year-old down 3 flights of subway stairs, and the doors open and there's this guy in a business suit peeing. And I'm like, seriously. But I was too intimidated to actually say anything to him, so I just picked up my stroller and carried it down the stairs. It was horrible. It was just very surprising because I'm from Texas and it was my first week living in New York, and I was like, where am I? What is this place? But it's okay, that only happened once. Mostly because I started just avoiding the elevators because they all smell like pee. It was so not where the scope was going today. But that's the fun of Periscope. People, I'm telling you, it's a party. Alright, that's it for today, guys. This is your lunchtime writing scope. Now go do some writing. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye. You see all types of stuff in the city. That is so true. I digress. Time for you guys to go digress in your own writing. Alright.